Alright, now we got another example, and we're talking about black holes, dualistic corpuscular time-shared spaces, reality making, particle reunitizing, dual, I said that already, systems. Okay. Stacked particles in a black hole. I'm on page 58. The reference of the numbers for me. Particles scattered in a black hole. So basically, we've got these little. Yeah. I got a dog here. Let's see. We've got these little frames of references that each particle is on a frame of its own reference. So if you have space and you have these particles spread out through space from their own points of view in relationship to where the other one is, they're all in the center of that space. Particle is scattered in space, stacked particles in a black hole, all in the center. Hey, you gotta move. Okay. Alright. So, space, all remaining space is part of, let's see if it's, yeah, let's just make sure I didn't bump something. I call it, at this stage I just noticed that it's kind of like a white hole. It looks like my is crooked here. 1 second. The dog is acting up here. Alright, there we go. To create space, there are two main parts. One is V space, where all energy orbits in the singularity 90 degrees perpendicular from all space with P mass, potential mass particles. V mass is virtual space, and P mass is potential mass particles. R space is the white hole pushing out in reality and space-time. They are all attracted towards the center, and entanglement accumulates that force. The more particles, the more the attraction to the center of that powerful black hole. So basically, all the matter that falls into the black hole, and the single particle, which is called the space particle, is basically a kind of like a logical contradiction that is useful for us, which is that the whole space particle from this point of view is just one particle, and then that way when a piece of energy, which is a particle, pushes itself out into the space, it gains degrees of freedom within that space. And matter where each particle is in those frames of references, or down that long gravity well, and that gravity well technically is in the same point of singularity. Wrap your mind around that. But anyway, conceptually, the space particle gains is one particle, and then individually broken up into Planck length particles within the black hole also, and that's because of the reunitization of, I'm gonna say, what we call the base particle, and whatever that is, we don't know what that is, but it's obviously some energy that has a high enough centrifugal force to fight off the centripetal force of the black hole to create an equilibrium. If it didn't, it would be squished into non-existence. It would just vanish eventually. And of course, I have an argument against that too as well, is that if something that is a singularity, which has no diameter, actually has a diameter and is being squished down, but it has no limit to how far it can be switched down, that's also a halting problem. So that's interesting. Wrap your mind around that. The more particles, the more the attraction to the center of that powerful black hole, even though it's not a force, gravity's not a force, that non-force can still kill. That's the funny part. Even though it's not a force, if you're up on something, you fall, you could die. Complex structures is entangled in the black hole. Your computer is a V computer in the black hole. So it's not necessary. It has a virtual computer, or it's entangled with itself. So technically, it's in cooperation. The two out of phase time, the corpuscular times are out of phase. But when you have a computer, both are in phase, so you get persistent particles. Complex structure is entangled in the black hole. Your computer is in the black hole on both sides of the corpuscular times, because that's what I'm saying, is that the two are in phase and it creates a persistent particle. And it is a buffer, a superposition buffer. There is a superposition buffer in the black hole. That's actually been proven through the bomb tester. Ironic superposition we looked for locally instead of general relativity. We found, I was saying in superposition, quantum relativity, let's see what I was talking about here. So one thing I wanted to point out is the double pendulum experiment is a little drawing of it. It's like right there, and that drawing is each pivotal point on the double pendulum. If you were to look at the atoms, on that, they would look like this right here. And those atoms have rings, and those rings are what make up the pivots of the pendulum. So technically, when that pendulum is moving, it becomes unpredictable. It's because the trajectories that are in superposition we don't know, what they are. And so if you knew what they were, then you could predict that pendulum swing. It doesn't mean, there's a lot of variables there. You've got grease, possibly. You've got contact between the two metals. You could have different kinds of metals. The interaction is technically electromagnetic. Everything, basically is an electromagnetic interaction. I was just going to mention that the double pendulum and a lot of things that are random, like chaos things, are mainly because of superposition. They consider it to be random, but if it was random, it wouldn't make a pattern, an interference pattern. Like where there's an interference pattern, if you were to look at it through at a different direction, it could look like this. Whereas if you take this interference pattern, you cut it the other way, it would cut it right down like this. It would look like that. And you can see that these patterns could have to do with orbits, superposition orbits in superposition time. The dual corpuscular time shared space. They're separate but intimately connected. And so it says here, making a this is okay. If you cut perpendicular to the poles, you will see a very familiar pattern, and it looks like this. Even this pattern, would be a double slit, out like this. And so you can see the predictability of a orbit, an orbit around an attractor. And I'm not saying how it's doing it. I'm just suggesting that it is happening. An interference pattern, which means the particle in the black hole is stripped into parts. One part is P mass, the other part is potential mass. and one part is vertical particle, the other, or V particle, which is virtual particle. P mass and potential mass and virtual particle move 90 degrees offset from each other. When they coincide, a cooperative collision creates a persistent particle. And this is my primitive way of talking about it. Later I talk about frames and how the frames come into they entangle when the two out of phase times, completely, like if this is the time reference here and the time reference there is different places, those have to become aligned before it becomes a persistent particle. Let me just check my time here. I've been doing 10 minutes. Yep, I'll end right there on the persistent particle. Yep.